Hey guys, it's Matt. This is a very comprehensive presentation about the Mandela effect. The main inspiration for doing this is a good segment of this community that's very interested in the Mandela effect, which many times I'll call the ME, or even those that make videos about the Mandela effect don't even understand it. It's driving me crazy. They don't even understand it. So it is time for a very thorough and comprehensive analysis that will present and organize the information where it can be understood by people that don't know a lot about it. I'll keep this as simple as I can. We'll provide maybe a new take on it or some new theories for those that have been very interested in it. And for the haters, those here, I can hear them say, it's a psyop. What is that? What was that? It's a psyop. Oh, yeah, okay. For the haters, I'm going to introduce some information and make a presentation where perhaps some of them will begin to open their mind a bit and see that it's not just a psyop. A few quick notes before I begin. When people watch Mandela Effect presentations, of course, they expect the endless Mandela Effect images. They want Curious George with a tail and without a tail picking his butt in a tree. They want Mona Lisa's smile and books side by side. I could spend all day on my version of Photoshop putting the Berenstain Bears right next to the Berenstain Bears. Well, Matt, you don't have to do anything. All that shit already exists. I hear you. I don't have any of that here. It's more about the presentation. And honestly, I don't know what I and this channel can get away with in terms of loading those images. I understand those images appear in other Mandela Effect videos. I'm not sure the standard between this, what is allowed here and other channels is the same. If I load 5 seconds of Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, it's blocked worldwide. If 40,000 kids in Duluth host Michael Jackson's Billie Jean on their YouTube channel, somehow that's allowed, if you see what I'm saying. Okay, let's begin. The most important reason for this presentation is, if you want to jump to the last page of the book or the last line of the story, I believe personally we live inside a gigantic Mandela effect. I believe these little Mandela effects, like what seem to be trivial to most people, movie lines, etc., is a symptom many of us notice of something much greater going on, something that shows us basically how reality itself works. And I hope to talk about at the end. Now, I've probably 30% of the people I've already lost going, what? We came here for Curious George Tales, and he's talking about all the realities. I mean, this guy's a loon. He's lost it. Hey, I don't know. I guess I started out trying to please all people with this presentation, but it's only going to be for those that want to think really big, really big. And even if you don't see, there's so many people here in this community that don't see the Mandela effect, that are still big outside the box, outside the toy box thinkers in so many different areas. I think you'll find this interesting, even if you're not affected, because this channel, I think we've really weeded out some of the intransigent blockheads over the years, and only the big thinkers are left. So if you don't see it, that's fine. We all bring different things to the table. I still think you'll enjoy this presentation. There's still so much confusion about this. I have to start with the absolute basics. I promise I'll be as quick as possible. People roll their eyes like, yeah, we need to hear this one more time, what the Mandela effect is. I'll be quick. There's still confusion. There's elements here people don't understand. Basically, you wake up, something in your reality has changed. Most Mandela effects as they're presented are trivial. Movie lines. Life is like a box of chocolates is now presented as was. We've all heard that stuff. But there are other things. There can be personal Mandela effects where people say, I know there was a hardware store there just a few weeks ago, and I went over there, and they say there's never been a hardware store. There can be personal Mandela effects, or Mandela effects that are much more real than, quote, movie lines or Curious George tales. The main thing to understand about the Mandela effect is when there is a change in reality, you or the Mandela affected, you just know it, and you know what it was, at least for what's called your anchor effects. Sure, there's thousands and thousands of these examples where we're not quite sure. And, the scorpions, the wind of change. It was the winds of change. Well, maybe. I don't know. But you have these things called anchor effects. And they're as strong as, growing up, you in the apartment building, you might have had this blue, ugly shag carpet. And then somehow it came up and you're talking with relatives and they're like, remember that green shag carpet that the apartment came with? You're like, what? You played on it hundreds of times. You know it's blue. And this is for a personal Mandela effect, but you can carry forward the same level of confidence, even to what seems like the trivial, like movie lines, for example. But you know it was blue. Then Uncle Joe's like, no, it was green. Look, here are the pictures from when we came over. And they're going to show you pictures. It was a green carpet. But what you played on it as a kid. It was there for 10 years. You spilled on it. You know what it was. It's not confabulation. You know what it was. Just like, you going to forget your middle name? Somebody shows you your birth certificate. It's like, it's not George. It's Harry. You know your middle name. It doesn't matter what physical evidence they show you. So when there is a change, you know what it was. All right, the Mandela effect with their anchor effects. They can present all the evidence in the world, and there is no date of change. This is one of the main things people still get confused about. There's no date of change. Once something changes that's different from the reality that not you remember, that you know, it's always been that way, back through time, forever. There's no, in 1972 it flipped. No, it all records as far back as possible in the human record reflect the new reality. So this by itself, there is no better case for retrocausality or time working in both directions than those who are Mandela affected. Okay, in order to understand it, we have to examine its characteristics. In looking at its characteristics, we can then maybe bridge how the symptom of whatever reality is doing, showing us Mandela effects, is actually something we can use to build a greater understanding of how the entire reality itself works. So have to isolate its symptoms and what potentially is going on here. Then can you apply the microcosm to the larger, or the below to the above, and determine that reality itself reflects these same symptoms or characteristics. So I'll be as brief as I can through the ones that, especially that you know, some of which need a little bit more emphasis. Characteristic number 1, the Mandela effect is always subtle. Always subtle. So even before I kind of emphasize that you just know, but it's like, ooh, there's always something pulling to get you to doubt yourself. For example, Mr. T, a pitiful. Mr. T will never be a Mandela effect because there can't be a subtle change to Mr. T in any respect. Let's just look at the name first. Mr. T, if it's Mr. F, everybody's going to know, I would think. Even those that completely dismiss the Mandela effect as a psyop. Mr. F? What? Mr. T can't change, even to Mr. Z. There's no subtle possibility there. All right? Now, even in the way he looks, Mr. T with instead of a what do you call that thing? A mohawk. Maybe it's a white mohawk. He's now sprayed it white or dyed it. See, there's no subtleness change. And Mr. T, if you're listening, congratulations. You can never be Mandela affected like Franco Colombo was, and I guess there's no reply from him before he died. Anyway, it's subtle, guys. It's somebody sending me again the Scorpions. The wind of change. The wind of change. That sounds so bizarre. Life is like was there. It's subtle. Now, Matt, that just proves confabulation, and these are movie lines. It's trivial. It's subtle. So obviously you're misremembering. Obviously, I can hear the haters rising up out of their bathtubs. But even when it concerns a continent, it can be subtle. A continent shifting 1,000 miles north can still be subtle. Australia is a gigantic anchor effect for me. Huge anchor effect. Now, I always had an idea where Australia is, or in my reality was. And we'll get into, what does that mean, my reality, and these strange theories about we shifted from the Sagittarius arm of the Neil deGrasse Tyson cosmic map to the Orion arm. And there's a lot of that stuff that just gets a little bit crazy. I'll try to talk about it towards the end of this presentation. Listen, you can hear the haters. Somebody saying, your dumb ass believes an entire continent, Australia, moved 1,000 miles up? Or maybe you think Papua New Guinea and all that shit up there was just pulled down, whatever your fancy is. You think all that shit moved a continent, and you're calling that subtle? Yeah, from the perspective of the person affected, it's always subtle. It's incredible how it always plays this game. It's always subtle. So let me just give you an example where it would blatantly not be subtle. It basically would wake, hopefully, everyone up. But the way the Mandela effect works and how I think reality resets, like Dark City, not as many people would notice, even if it was this blatant. So one day you open up your favorite map book, which you open up every day, and you're looking at the continents, and you're familiar where everything is. And Australia is now pinched between Florida and Cuba. Between Florida and Cuba is Australia. You can even see it off the coast of Key West, Kokomo. You could say, what? You can see Australia out there from the beaches of Key West? Did Hemingway write about this? Where are the residuals on this shit? So that would be absurd, right? Or if Japan just was tucking its way up under Spain. I mean, okay, it's absurd. But it's still absurd when you look at a map and you like Australia is now on the latitude line of Brazil. It's the land down under. It still looks absurd to me, but it's just subtle enough where you can't really make a case for it, and people can just simply bring forth and pour forth the confabulation and the misremembering and all that. It's not like Mr. T in Australia appearing off the tip of the Hawaiian Islands is never going to happen because it's not subtle enough. This is what is so amazing. And it always gives people on the other side enough in their argument to say you're obviously just misremembering because of the subtleness. But you can be absolutely sure something's changed. So the best way to cap out this first characteristic, the subtleness, is it's incredibly subtle to anybody that's coldly analyzing the Mandela effect and is not affected in any way, like Chick-fil-A. Oh, you just missed CHIC, Phila. You just misremembered. I mean, obviously, it's close to what you remember, so you could see why you would make that mistake, Matt. I can see why you would make that mistake, Matt. It's okay, but but to you, if you're Chick-fil-A Mandela affected, it literally is absurd. CHICK spelled out is absurd, completely ridiculous. You know what it was. It's an anchor effect for millions of people. But Bernstein Bears, I had somebody write to my face, said, I know what I read to my damn kid. I mean, I know. I opened that book every day up for a year or whatever. They had all the books. So, but see, it's always subtle enough where you can't recruit consensus, or I'm not saying that right, but you can't convince anybody if they don't see it. Take these characteristics and apply them to the greater reality, and then we'll be getting somewhere. Characteristic number 2, there is no right or wrong answer. So I haven't talked to him in a few years. Dan at Scarab Performance YouTube channel, which is primarily about the Mandela effect, the Scarab Performance all run together. And he would be like, this is a huge new change, a Mandela effect. And I'd be like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's always been that way from my reality bubble's perspective. He's not right. I'm not right. So somebody might be saying that doesn't really understand the Mandela effect, be saying, wait a second. If you people in this Mandela effect community, you'd all be affected the same way. And look, we live in a bizarre, wondrous reality that, at least from the perspective of us living inside the body and the avatar, we'll never truly figure out. It does seem mind-blowing how this can be possible. All we can do is notice the symptoms. There is no right or wrong answer. If he's saying that this has changed, I absolutely believe in his reality there was a change. I believe in his reality, whatever you want to say, the carpet was blue, or the Rodin thinker was holding up a middle finger. Whatever he says, I believe it. Just because I don't see it, that doesn't mean you don't see it, Matt. You think you're right, he's wrong. No. That's not the way it works. There can be multiple changes and different realities for different people. There's no question about this, in my opinion. There is no right or wrong answer. This is why you take a podium against each other, there's no point. If you declare a winner, then you've made a mistake in understanding how the reality works. Characteristic number 3 is the most fascinating one, and it can and should be applied to how reality itself works in the same fashion. If you say there's a change in something, or you recognize something as a Mandela effect, the new reality, and it shouldn't be said that way because there is no new reality. That implies a date of change. There was no date of change. Whatever exists today, if you believe it's a change, has always existed. back through time. But whatever it exists today is inferior. It's a step down. It's a degradation or a bastardization. It's lower than what you remember. Okay, this is a very important characteristic that we can apply to reality itself, because which way is reality going? Is life out your window getting real good? No, but like I could do 24-hour filibuster on just how the new reality of what people remember is way worse than what existed. Just let's go through some briefly, and I'll be as quick as possible. You know these, but remember, I don't know if this rule has ever been broken. There are some that are neutral. That, you know, Matt, you can look at this Mandela effect and say whether it's not good or bad. You know, but if it does move one way or another, it's always worse. In other words, there's not one that's like, oh, this is better than I remember. I don't think that exists. So, Forrest Gump, life was like a box of chocolates. Life is a timeless characteristic. Timelessness. Life. The was is the past. That doesn't make life can't be in the past. Isn't that dumbass sitting on a bench talking to people? Well, Matt, he was retarded. He's going to get it wrong. No, they're not going to get the most iconic line of the movie, which transferred into the most iconic line almost in movie history. They're not going to get that wrong. And you have hundreds of thousands or millions of people remember Life is Like, which makes more sense. And then we'll talk about residuals later, but the back of the DVD box on the anniversary edition says, quote, life is like a box of chocolates. So the back of the DVD box gets the most iconic line in movie history wrong. We'll talk about residuals some other time. Obviously, life is a timeless concept. It's not was, whether he was retarded or not. Interview with a Vampire is a huge anchor effect for me. I know 100% what that movie was called. We have people that are huge fandom websites where they in pencil sketch. I've shown this before. Somebody will spend 10 hours pencil sketching Louis, Brad Pitt, whose character Louis in Interview with a Vampire, and they'll say it's one of their favorite movies, but then underneath the pencil sketch, they'll write the movie name wrong. Like they don't even know the name of their own favorite movie. Interview with a Vampire, of course, it's The Vampire. So in terms of inferior, Anne Rice, maybe she's retarded. It doesn't make any sense. If you do an interview with the Vampire, there's only two options. One, it's the Vampire, meaning it's like the big guy. You know, it's the Vampire. If the implies one or a very special one. So who would it be? Louis, Brad Pitt, like that tertiary 2-bit broken down vampire? Or would it be, who's the guy from the movie? It's Lestat. It's Tom Cruise. If Christian Slater, whatever is, has he had a role in 20 years? If he was going to interview the Vampire, we got an interview with the guy, it would be Lestat. He was interviewing Louis, who's not the Vampire. The also implies one. He's interviewing a vampire because there's a lot of them. One of the biggest Mandela effects of all time on its own is Dolly's lack of braces in the James Bond movie Moonraker. But there's nothing that helps the case here of inferior, quote, new result than the Dolly braces scene. I mean, that scene makes no sense without Dolly having braces. The director would have said, what are we doing here? The producers would have said, the actors would have been like, what are we doing here? It's absurd. It makes no sense without Dolly having braces. 45 seconds or less that don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know. Jaws falls out of a plane. There's always some comedic element with Jaws. The big, huge bad guy with the metal teeth. And, there's always it defies reality. Like he can't be killed, whatever. There's a bunch of rubble on him. Dolly helps him. This little blonde-haired Swedish girl. And they start playing the Tunnel of Love music. And she's helping remove rubble off him. I don't remember. It's been a long time. But they have a moment. Big, huge, ugly, evil Jaws. And he is an ugly man. Okay? He was also in Happy Gilmore. They have this moment and they're playing the Tunnel of Love music. The only affinity they would have to each other, the only way it works, just seconds after they've met, he has this huge smile. Of course, he has no teeth. It's all metal. Huge metal mouth. The affinity, the relationship is she smiles. She has a mouthful of braces. The Tunnel of Love music is playing. Little Swedish, beautiful little girl falls for this gigantic, ugly monster type. That's what they have in common. It doesn't work without that. It would have been stopped in the editing room. Somebody would have said, "Wait a second, what are we do? Who designed this scene? What glue were they sniffing?" So this, guys, I mean, if the dolly braces scene doesn't get those who can't see the Mandela effect to at least question, like, yeah, this makes no sense, then I just don't understand it. It is so blatant with that one example. Okay, we'll continue with a few more. This could go on for 10, 15 hours. Every single one produces an inferior result, but they're fun to talk about. So let's just do one or two more. You know, you have the Scorpions' famous song. Greg remembers, I remember. The winds of change. Isn't that the way you would present it? The winds of change? The wind of change. And even they sing the wind of change. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, there's a lot of subtle ones that are just the new reality. Quote, new reality. There is no new reality. It's worse. My favorite example of inferior new reality to talk about is Field of Dreams. Let's just do a few minutes on it. This one fascinates me. I remember, a lot of Mandela-affected people remember clearly, and this is an anchor effect for me. I am sure if you build it, they will come. Now, I'm aware that reality just doesn't exist. The oldest of the old VHS tapes or beta tapes you could find in your attic, if you pop them in and you didn't know you had it for 20 years, of course it's all going to say, if you build it, he will come. That's what exists now. Per the Mandela effect, reality basically like resets itself back through time, and it's always been that way. But to me, it is an anchor effect. And this is one where the inferior reality narrative or argument is clear for me, but the Goldilocks reality and the subtle principle comes back, where it gives those that dig in on the he side that say, well, what do you mean? It's always, I'm not Mandela affected. I always remember even watching this movie as a kid, if you build it, he will come. And Matt, it makes perfect sense because his father comes back. Oh, this drives me crazy. His father comes back and has a catch. You want to talk about inferior new reality. If you see, they'll say, what are you talking about? The new reality. First of all, there is no new reality, Matt. You guys are out to lunch. You're confabulating, and you're complete psychopaths for even believing in such a thing. But let's just say you're right. What are you talking about, inferior reality? If you build it, he will come. That's exactly what it should be, because his father comes back. Oh, my God. You've got to be kidding me. That it might be the dumbest argument associated with Field of Dreams of all time. The he is his father. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in this community that completely see if you build it, he will come associated with the father coming back. And I can see you basically. It's not a good image, rising up out of the bathtubs, wishing you could throw stuff at me. Okay, I'll present your case as fairly as I can. But here you go. The movie's not about his father. It has nothing. The movie's about saving the farm. Do I have to remind anybody of this? The whole movie is about saving the farm, and because he gets this voice, to me, which is if you build it, they will come, he has to go do this. She's like, you're going to go do this weird thing? We're trying to save the farm? My damn brother, Timothy Busfield, and his obnoxious ass keeps coming on with his little minions and cretins trying to get me to sign this paperwork, and you're going to go do this weird shit and try to go find Terrence Mann. It's all about saving the farm. He mentions his father one time when he's with James Earl Jones, Terrence Mann, and they're driving back. I don't know, it was before they picked up Doc Graham or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I said some bad things to my father and I regret it. So a few sentences he says about his father as he's driving the VW van, but the whole movie is going to be built around the key phrase in movie history, if you build it, he will come, the return of the father. Let's just see if you build it, they will come makes more sense. The whole movie is about saving the farm. Timothy Busfield, his obnoxious ass, keeps coming with his big book of paperwork to get her to sign, and Ray's away trying to track down Terrence Mann. He's like, you're going to lose the farm, Ray. You're going to lose the farm. Go back to 30-something. First time that creepy actor was introduced back, you have to be over 50, remember this dumb show called 30-something. So James Earl Jones, his key speech proves if you build it, they will come. Maybe we should sign, no, Ray. He doesn't say they will come because that would give it away. It's Goldilocks reality. It always has to give both sides enough to latch on to. It says, people will come, Ray. People will most definitely come, Ray. People will come, Ray, which is in line with the principle of saving the farm. People will come to Iowa. Is people, they will come if you build it, or he will come? father comes to do a catch. Oh, yeah, the whole movie's about that. Oh, my God. How stupid are people? People will come, Ray. People most definitely come. They'll come to Iowa. I don't know the whole dance line, but speech. They'll come to Iowa without even knowing. They'll drive up your driveway and try to molest your wife without even knowing. They'll hand over the $20 because it's a shitty life they have and memories they long for. I don't know what he says, but then the last scene shows all the cars coming down. They are coming. You got to be kidding me! How people latch onto the he with this one. There should be one sentence on an IQ test. Explain the he versus they come in Field of Dreams. And if you latch on to he, you fail. Okay, because this could go on forever. Let me just close this section on inferior, quote, new reality. There's no such thing as new reality. It's always been. But inferior degradation, my favorite example, or one of my favorite examples, as you know, is the Jaws scene. You're gonna need a bigger boat. Okay, this is just fascinating to me. Okay, Roy Schneider, he sees Jaws first. They're out on the boat, the three of them, the old salt sea captain, Roy Schneider, and what's his name, Richard Dreyfuss, obnoxious little Richard Dreyfuss. They're out there trying to get the shark. Roy Schneider sees it first. It's this massive ass thing, and he goes right to the old sea captain, who only wants to get paid. The old sea captain don't give a shit about opening up the beaches or Amity Island or whatever it's called, and he don't care about the mayor. He just wants to make money. And he seems to have they have a little Moby Dick thing going on between he and the shark, but that's not the point. He says he's had the boat for like 30 years. This is an old piece of shit. Roy Schneider says to the old sea captain, "You're going to need a bigger boat." Like, he would say, "What? Why are you talking to me, Kimosabe? This is my boat. Is Amity Island or whatever going to fund me to get a new boat? I don't give a shit whether you open the beaches back up or not." He would never say it. And guys, anybody screaming at me, rising up out of their bathtub, like, Matt, every single mistake in a movie is you're going to call the Mandela effect. First off, tens or hundreds of thousands of people, the whole point of it being a Mandela effect, clearly remember we're going to need a bigger boat. If you're in a foxhole with somebody and you're three out there against the shark, you're in a foxhole. You're going to use the word we. You're not going to be in a foxhole in World War I and say to the guy next to you, "You ain't going to make it." Well, you're right next to me, you jerk. We're not going to make it. It would be a we situation. So no, not every single movie mistake is a Mandela effect. It's a Mandela effect, remember, because people clearly remember what once was. But even if you don't, you can still make the argument that something weird is going on here. Let me give you an example. Steven Spielberg movie, right? Jaws? Now, I know it was towards the beginning of his career, but completely, you could say Illuminati connected, and it was involved in all the big pictures. And, this guy's, would you say slightly connected? Yeah, okay. He had also done other things, and he was an up-and-coming famous director. Do you think he would have any power or say over a movie scene, or he's just completely beholden to the writer? He's just going to have to take the knee to the writer. Of course, Steven Spielberg, even towards his younger years, would have full authority to make changes. It was just three of them they have a little dinner or whatever before they meet George, and the sea captain just rips one. Steven Spielberg, like, that's in the script? Get that out of there. No, it's right here. The old sea captain farts, and then Roy Schneider can't finish his dinner. He would take it out. He has full authority. He would say, "You're going to need a bigger boat." Cut. Who wrote this? What? Who bring him in here? Who wrote this shit? The sea captain don't give a shit about opening the beaches. We're going to need a bigger boat. And it would actually imply we might have to go. We can't use the old sea captain because this thing's so big. This old hoopty piece of shit in the water ain't going to do the job. So Spielberg on the spot would have made the change. It would have, if he missed it and he was all amped up on schnapps like that driver in Eurotrip, the editing room would have said, "Wait a second here. This don't make no sense." Okay, we could go on and on forever. It's always an inferior new, quote, new result. Okay, last thing. I have to be very careful saying something so definitively because the haters will come out and be like, well, who's to say? Some people, Matt, even if it is a Mandela effect, they like the Rodin's thinker fist to the chin better than the head. The head don't make no... It's okay. Some you can argue it's kind of neutral. For example, what would be Mona Lisa, for example? Some people say, I kind of like it. I kind of like the little smile towards her left side, and okay, but it's going to be very, very neutral. There's not one example where you could say this is so much better than what we remember. Not one. Characteristic number 4, and everybody's favorite one to analyze, the residuals. For some reason, there is always a host of contradictory reality residuals that are left over, quote, it's not a good way of saying it, after the change, because there was no change. But I guess I'll stop saying that. You hopefully got that by now. But that's a big part of understanding the Mandela effect. There was no date of change, but I'm not going to say that again. The residuals come out everywhere, and there are all types of residuals. There are residuals in even books and print and even on the internet, and things that you would think if there was a change, well, and the reality overrode itself, because that's how some people talk about the Mandela effect, then why wouldn't it overwrite the residuals? And all the theories we'll talk about on the back end. But there are reality breakdown residuals. There's all sorts of different classifications of residuals. So let's go back to Dolly. And again, we could do 20 hours on this, hundreds of hours, thousands just on this. But going back to Dolly, you go to a website or a magazine article that ranks all the Bond girls. And way down the list, it says Dolly, from Moonraker. It says white, pigtails, blonde hair, Swedish-looking, braces. And well, why would they list braces? She didn't have braces. So these residuals are everywhere, absolutely everywhere. I'm just going to talk about the residual examples that are just monsters, in my opinion, just huge. If you're not Mandela affected, we don't see how these can be ignored. They're so big. And then ones that I'll call like reality breakdown residuals, things that just don't add up. Not like, there's a ton, there are millions and millions of cases of residuals where, a magazine article in the headline will say exactly what we remembered, but then in the body of the article reflects the reality today. The amount of residuals in that category are endless. Let's just talk about the monsters. One of the biggest is the Rodin's thinker, which, remember, is a character from his earlier works, The Gates of Hell. Had a little thinker inside the gates of hell, but that was so popular, of course, and people loved the little thinker that, oh, Mr. Rodin, can you make a statue just based on that? Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's how it happened, just naturally and organically, like it wasn't a furthering the gates of hell presentation without the gates of hell, and it just becomes he's just a fun little thinker. Sorry, let's just not stray too much. People will think they already think I'm completely insane for making a Mandela effect presentation. But you have people posing in front of the thinker, whether it's a reproduction or several Rodins or the Rodin that died in the World Trade Center with in whatever that damn brokerage house was. You have people in front of it posing exactly like the thinker. They're trying to mimic the thinker. They have their fist to their forehead, and the statue right behind them is not the same pose. So this didn't just happen once, okay? We have a lot of these examples where people are posing to be the thinker with the fist to the forehead, where the thinker is right next to him with the fist to the jaw. Now, okay, one dumbass might make a mistake or whatever, but this just happens over and over again. You even have George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw, one of the most egotistical, arrogant people of all time. He's naked. It was a big, important photo shoot. George Bernard Shaw that literally presented himself to the world that I'm smarter than you are. That type of person. Probably one of the most obnoxious people in the world. He's posing with his fist to his head. He's the thinker. He's trying to give an ode to himself. I'm the thinker. I'm so smart and intelligent. Could you imagine what they could have done with him? What his rivals could have done with him? If there was no Mandela effect, he goes live worldwide with this pose. He's naked on his fist to the forehead. Georgie, were you trying to do the thinker to imply you're the thinker and you're the thinking man and we all dummies here? You didn't get the pose right, you jackass. It gets worse. I looked into it a few years ago. Rodin himself, maybe, or the museum or something, has close ties to George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw might have sent the pictures of what he did to Rodin or the Rodin Museum. Something along those guys. It's not just a pose in front of a statue that's 400 years old. There's some connection he has with Rodin. He would never have gotten it wrong. To me, the residual is so strong that somebody would have to say, Matt, I don't know what you guys are talking about, this Mandela effect. I don't see it, but I hear you. There's no possible way George Bernard Shaw got his pose of the thinker wrong. And then on top of that, remember, you have not countless. I mean, the residuals go away over time. That is when I don't know if I list that as a characteristic, but reality will continue to overwrite itself. The residuals you can find go away over time, but you can still find pictures of people posing right next to the damn statue, whether it's a recreation in their local Fields Museum or whatever, where they're just not getting it right. If it was just that, I probably wouldn't be talking about it. But the George Bernard Shaw thing is just huge. Just look it up on Google Images. George Bernard Shaw, thinker. You'll see it. Impossible. Perhaps the biggest one of all time in terms of residuals is Isaiah 11:6 in the Bible. The lion will lay down with the lamb. There ain't no lion laying down with no lamb anymore. And I remember looking at it years ago, and I don't want to say there's a new Mandela effect here or another change, guys. I just want to tell you personally what I think. And, I'm probably wrong. But I remember, okay, the lion is now the wolf. The wolf lays down with the lamb. But you look at it now, it's like the wolf doesn't lay down with the wolf lives with the lamb. It seems like it's changed again, but that's to me. But I don't want to get too crazy. But the point is, it's just lion, lamb, wolf, lamb. But the residuals you have, just forget the language and the verbiage and what follows after with the leopard and the kid shall lead them and whatever. I mean, people have a whole different memory and very clear memory. I wrote it down somewhere based on what Isaiah, the whole passage of Isaiah 11:6 said, all the way down to, at the end of the close now, as in the little child will lead them or whatever. The whole thing is changed. Probably all reality resets all the time, like Dark City. We'll talk about that later. But the residuals are off the charts. At the time, I'm sure these residuals go away over time, and whether they really go away, reality itself is overwriting itself, or Google's just doing it on its own. But you could find like countless paintings of a lion laying down with a lamb and sculptures of lion laying down with the lamb. And first off, they're Christian presentations and Christian paintings. Who could possibly make that mistake? That by itself is impossible. They just got it wrong. But it gets worse. You have the paintings, and you'll find a few of these left, but again, most of them get wiped out. Residuals go away over time. You have a painting that somebody spent countless hours on. A very Christian religious person puts the lamb between the legs of the lion laying down with the lamb, and then right on the painting it says Isaiah 11:6. So so there's no doubt that's what they're presenting. It gets worse. I don't know if these residuals exist anymore, but I assure you there were a few. Somebody spends countless hours and time and effort painting this beautiful lion laying down with the lamb, which I just don't understand. They get all wrong. Then it says Isaiah 11:6 on the painting, but then they have the passage written in. It says right on the painting with the lion and the lamb, the wolf will lay with the lamb. What? That's impossible. Too fair. What does that guy say what did they say Fast and Furious 5 when they all meet again in Brazil? I never can figure out. Put in the comments, those two guys. Anybody can talk shit in Spanish, bro. Too fair. What does he say? Sorry. There's another class of residuals, not just, links and shit on the internet, like literal reality breakdown residuals that I don't know what to call. We'll just call it reality breakdown residuals, or residuals that are much more real than a freaking URL that doesn't reflect the body of the article. You have things like, when Australia, one of the ways I gave a presentation years ago, when Australia to me, how insane does this sound? If anybody who doesn't understand the Mandela effect, they're just listening. When Australia moved, what? Get the white coats. When Australia moved, and I did a lot of research years ago, the last or outer Australia little island is only 90 miles now. See, that's the way I'm going to say it now, from Papua New Guinea. 90 miles. Where are the reality breakdown residuals? What you talking about, Kemosabe? Okay, give me a minute. 90 miles, okay? Number one, if it's this prison that's all UK is going to send all their prisoners to Australia, and they have prisoner lineage and everything. Nobody could ever get off. You don't have to guard them. What are they going to do? Well, they could, and if it's only 90 miles from the outer island, okay, those outer islands are farther off, but it's technically only 90 miles from Papua New Guinea. The last time I looked at it, maybe it's changed again. Any idiot, Tom Hanks, or even idiot Chet Hanks, stranded. What's that movie where he's stranded with Wilson and the volleyball Outcast or Castaway? Yeah. Any of these fools that were put on the island as prisoners, if the tide was right, they just make their little outcast rafts and get their Wilson volleyballs or beach balls or whatever and float up to, if the tide's right, it wouldn't be that hard to build some sort of boat to go 90 miles in the right tide. Look what they say Shackleton did in that nonsense of Antarctica, making his way to Elephant Island. Are you kidding me? I don't buy into that bullcrap either. So that's number one. All the prisoners would have been able to get off, or some, of course. But I'm leading with the least strong example. They get stronger. Then I started doing research on what do you call indigenous species of Australia, and of course you have across the board, potentially like 1,000 indigenous species, or at least when I did the research. But a portion of the indigenous, meaning it's only these animals or whatever, these snake or whatever, is only on Australia. Okay, it's an island. Snakes don't do well swimming 90 miles. I got that. It's probably just Aesop's fable or something where a snake can hitch a ride on the back of a shark or something. But birds, see, that would be something different. There's all this, maybe the residuals are gone today, but when I did my research, there's all these bird species that are only on Australia. Well, that's just not possible. In the right wind, 90 miles for a bird to go, they would go back and forth between Papua New Guinea and Australia the way flights go back and forth, 50-minute flights between LA and San Francisco back in the heyday when people could actually travel. When I lived in LA and in San Francisco, going up and down California for the insurance company, they went like every 35 minutes, just boom, boom, boom. You could go to the airport basically any time, especially prior to the big job application, just jump on a flight. You don't need a big reservation. You go and there's one leaving, and probably when you get to the gate, 20 minutes, boom, get up to San Francisco. That's what the birds would be doing between Papua New Guinea and Australia. You wouldn't have I'm calling it indigenous species, but there's a name when it's exclusive, the way like Catalina Island supposedly has exclusive species, and the Galapagos or whatever. But the birds, you wouldn't have it with the birds if it was that close. It's not possible, guys. I'm telling you, if you don't know birds, butterflies migrate from like Mexico up to Canada. Birds going 90 miles, it's in the right wind is nothing. Absolutely nothing. 900 miles they've done without landing, certain birds. Okay. So you have that aspect. You have the human species would have blended together over tens of thousands of years. You wouldn't have the Aborigines of Australia looking completely distinctive and Papua New Guinea indigenous looking completely distinctive. I think maybe it's called New Guinea because of the way the indigenous peoples there look. They look African. They're black. They don't look. I understand that the skin color is very dark of Aborigine people in Australia, but they would have blended together. Okay, at some point, somebody at some point would have taken a few rafts back and forth between 90 miles, and you wouldn't have completely different human species. When supposedly we're told they had hundreds of thousands of years to take their rafts and their canoes and their sailboats back and forth. You would have had some inbreeding. It didn't happen at all. And they're just too close where that's just not possible, in my opinion. If you don't like that example, fine. The bird one is, I would say, impossible to dismiss. I'm not talking dodo birds, flightless birds. They have to swim. There are tons of these reality breakdown or much more real than a URL misquoting a movie line residuals regarding the Mandela effect, real things that just don't add up, like the one I just presented. But here's another one. Many people believe the Rock of Gibraltar, or remember the Rock of Gibraltar in the middle of the Mediterranean or halfway between Morocco and Spain or whatever. Now the Rock of Gibraltar is attached to Spain. There could be a little, 20 feet of water or something. I mean, basically it's attached, a little bridge to get over. Okay. So the problem comes with the story about the monkeys. I don't remember the exact story, but I remember doing a lot of research on it when I presented this topic the first time, 4 years ago, something like that. There are these monkeys on the Rock of Gibraltar today. And the story is, pirates brought them over from Africa, or Blackbeard, or merchant ships. Somebody brought these monkeys, and they learned to live and breed on the Rock of Gibraltar. Well, the big problem to me when I looked at it was, why didn't these monkeys make their way up to more fertile grounds throughout all of Europe? Why didn't they leave the Rock? And if you look at the Rock today, there's nothing there. All right. There's it's just rock and some grass growing up and some weeds. And you're thinking it's not some lush jungle, or what are they eating? These monkeys apparently are still on the Rock. Again, it's been years since I've looked into it, but there's not a whole, if these monkeys were able to survive on this rock, monkeys are pretty darn smart. I don't know if they're baboons or whatever they are. There's nothing there. If they're surviving, they're barely surviving. Look at the topography. Look at the pictures. You're like, what are they eating? They would try and naturally move to where there's food. Is that a stretch? They would kind of anything. Rats move to where there's food. Monkeys would probably be able to come up with that conclusion a little bit sooner. They would move to different. They would move. There's no of these monkeys in Europe. They're isolated to the Rock. And I don't know. So you could come up with any sort of counter argument. Matt, well, you think the farmers of southern Spain are going to put up with a bunch of monkeys? Anytime they tried to make their way up, which of course they did, they were all killed off. And they kind of learned quickly. You step 1 foot out of Shawshank, you're going to get your monkey head blown off. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. You'd think, there would be some of these monkeys that made it off the Rock, but they're just content to eat grass and sand or something. I don't know. Maybe that's not the best example, but these types of examples, we could go, all day. They're not just lines and misquotes. And there's much more to these Mandela effects that, if you observe reality itself, it starts to break down. One of the really strong arguments for the Mandela effect, if you don't see it at all, is if you call people misremembering, for example, or they remember something that doesn't exist. What a coincidence. They're all remembering the exact same thing for the most part. So a big one, not really a big one to me. It seems like it should be Luke, I am your father. Luke, I am your father. That sounds like Yoda. To me, it should be that, but I don't know. That's not an anchor effect for me when I watch it now and it says, no, I am your, but that, whatever. It's not a big one for me, but it's a huge one, huge for a lot of people. And of course, people explain it away. Oh, well, some Saturday Night Live skit started quoting it and they got it wrong. And then it just perpetuates itself and everybody just remembers Luke. But here's the point. The point is, why does everybody remember it wrong? And maybe this isn't the greatest example. I'll throw another couple examples at you. But it's not like, what is it now? No, I am your father. So they bring in people into the focus group and they're all Mandela affected. And person number one's like, no, it was Luke, I am your father. And the person two's like, no, that wasn't it. It wasn't what it is today. But it was like, you son of a bitch, they had the son of a bitch was in there. I am your father. And the person sitting next to that person's like, no, it was Luke, you worthless troglodyte. I'm your father. And get in my Death Star. They remember something completely differently. What did you mean there? There's no son of a bitch in there. Is Luke, you worthless troglodyte, get in my Death Star. Like fat bastard. Get in my belly. Get in my Death Star. They all, everybody at this focus group remembers something different. But no. With the Mandela effect, they all remember the reality the same way. Nobody says, interview with the vampire. Well, this guy thinks it's Interview with a Vampire, and this guy thinks it's Interview with the Pink Lady vampires, a subset of Rydell High. It's not all over the place. There's consistency, which is not possible if people are just forgetting, right? Next characteristic, it can change back. I've never had this happen. Well, actually, I kind of have to a degree. I should tell you that personal story maybe after this segment. But a big one with the flip-flopping is, again, it'll seem trivial to certain people. Hillary Clinton, Hillary, and then it went to 1L, and people are absolutely positive. Then now it's back to 2 or whatever it is today. There's a lot of this flip-flopping. And my story's a little bit different. It's not like seeing a Mandela effect online and Kit Cash Dash, and then or Flintstones was a big one, I think. Flynn, Stones, and then Flint Stones, and that flip-flopped, and I don't know. Some people are big on it. I've heard this from enough people where they are just sure it flip-flopped back that I will list this as a characteristic, but I've never really experienced it in this way myself. I guess at the end I'll talk about my personal Mandela effect, ones that go beyond anger effects, where things like literally changed in front of my eyes. And that, I don't know if I want to list that as a characteristic, that things can change before people's eyes or not. I'll probably talk about those stories later, what happened to me, what happened to Greg. Last characteristic, and I don't know if it should be listed in terms of the characteristics like it's always subtle or the residuals, but I'm just going to put it here. You can never pin down anybody that's close to the Mandela effect, or you can never get a straight answer from somebody that should be able to give a straight answer, with only one exception, a gigantic Mandela effect for people. And the Mandela effects usually don't work this way. I mean, this is very odd. They say that you've heard, whether I'm getting I might get some of the names or facts wrong here, guys, but you know what I'm talking about. The Sinbad genie movie, Shaq did one called Kazam, I think, with Shaq, and that apparently still exists. There are like thousands of people, guys, and I've just heard these testimonies over and over and over again, as has Vanessa VA and others. Sinbad, the comedian, the only good thing he ever did was Jingle All the Way. He was supposedly starred in a movie called Shazam. It doesn't matter if I'm flip-flopping. There's no movie that exists. But people that remember the movie, they can get together, like if they sought each other out, and they have done this on Reddit or these message boards, where they can talk about scenes in the movie. And the person's like, yeah, I remember that scene. Here's what happened next. The movie never existed. It never existed in known reality. But at least I think Sinbad has come forth. He's aware of this Mandela effect. And at least he's come forth. This gets to what I'm talking about here. You can't pin down anybody close to it. Where he said, obviously I didn't make that movie. It's not like Sinbad. If reality reset, the Dark City reset, Sinbad would have fallen asleep. Obviously, I don't think he's going to fall asleep in his bowl of soup. That's what was presented in Dark City. But it's a good analogy, in my opinion, as to how really things work. Nobody's falling asleep in their soup, but reality is resetting itself. When it does, if Sinbad was really in a movie, he wouldn't have any memory of it. That's completely if reality reset, Sinbad's going to reset with it. I think most of us, when it's fluid and it changes, we reset to things daily. If you recognize certain Mandela effects, that doesn't mean you're going to see all the changes. They probably happen every second. You never know. But there's certain things we notice. So it's possible. I guess what I'm saying is if Sinbad is saying he never starred in a movie where everybody remembers scene by scene, thousands of people remember different scenes from the movie Shazam, and Sinbad says he wasn't in it, that's not definitive proof he didn't make a movie. That's just definitive proof that reality in some way changed and Sinbad is on the new frequency. And per the reality, there never was a movie. People are remembering something that no longer exists. That's not a good way of putting it, but it's the only way of putting it. But here I'm talking about pinning people down. And right, if the Dark City reality resets, the people we're trying to pin down, of course they're not going to have any idea what you're talking about because they've reset themselves to new reality. But there are some things where they should react a little differently. They should say, wait a second, what's going on here? I'll give you an example. All right. To a lot of people, there's a ton to the Mandela effect. There are lots and lots of Mandela effects in the Bible. Most seem more attached to the King James Version than others. I mean, there's just hundreds and hundreds at this point. from the Lord's Prayer, on earth as it is in heaven. People will swear it's they say in earth as it is in heaven. It doesn't make any sense with Hades, or on earth as it is in heaven. And then some versions reflect, what they remember, but others don't, or they swear the KJV has changed. And even in Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created to everybody that's Mandela affected, the heavens and the earth. And you can find tons and tons of residuals that now it says heaven, singular. So these, especially with the Bibles, they just come nonstop. Now this one isn't as big as Lion and the Lamb, Wolf and the Lamb, but to a lot of people, I researched this on my own even years ago. To a lot of people, Jesus was the truth, the way, and the light. The light, not the life. Of course, now it's truth, the way, and the life. Somebody's screaming at me. I can hear you. It's Matt. It's always been the truth, the way, and the life. I hear you. Don't say that to me, because you're not understanding how the Mandela effect works or what's possible here. To you, of course, it's always, and reality reflects that's what it's always been. But there's been enough people Mandela affected where they said light. It's not a big one compared to the others. But let me just tell my story as to what happened, because this section is you can't pin anybody down. So I was doing my research, and I wasn't finding the amount of residuals that I found when I initially researched Interview with a Vampire, which, residuals were just thousands of things like pouring out shortly after we kind of spotted that one, and the residuals kind of go away after time. But I found one person that on Etsy, that the artists, it's like the artist Amazon or whatever, they sell everybody's little artwork and sculptures and things on Etsy. So I forget exactly what she did. It was like a stencil or a T-shirt perhaps, but it was very well done and planned out, and she took time, and it probably put weeks and weeks to put together something professional. And it was in respect to Jesus. It said, Jesus, whatever, the truth, the way, and the light. And I went, well, this happens all the time with the Mandela effect, where people present something in a certain way, and they're not even aware it's, quote, changed. And this relates to me, the observable Tony download and all that stuff. But this, again, section is you can't pin anybody down. So I found her email, the seller, and I emailed her, and I said, you should know that this does not appear in the Bible. You've spent all this time on this stencil or a T-shirt or whatever. The Bible says the truth, the way, and the life. Now, it's okay. There's something called the Mandela effect. You might not be aware of it, but see, every time any of us have ever reached out to the person that was kind of involved in the Mandela effect, and I hope this is coming out okay. Like, you can never talk to them. You can't ever engage with them. Nobody can ever sit down, Anne Rice, and say, what do you think about all these Mandela effects associated with your book? Where even she has books. She released other books where it says in the other book, it says, see my other works of Anne Rice, Interview with a Vampire. They're promoting other books in Anne Rice books with the wrong name. Now, how is that possible? But this is maybe not a great example. I reached out to this person, and I just knew they wouldn't get back to me. I never well, that's strange, or let's talk about that, or email back and forth. And probably if reality is what it's been, that the product will just disappear. That's just, was that person an NPC, or who knows? The product, it will just disappear, and the residuals just slowly go away. I don't know if that was the best example, but let me lead with that and talk about one or two more. Okay, this example gets real strange, including the research I just did 10 minutes ago. So, okay, let me see if I can present this properly. Matthew 7, KJV. Many people remember, judge not lest ye be judged. How much Bible have I read? But again, it's just what we've heard over the course of our lifetimes. Of course, I could be wrong, but to many people, they're Mandela affected, and they would say, of course I remember, it's judge not lest ye be judged. So then when we did the research years ago, where people labeled this as a Mandela effect, it, quote, end quote, changed to judge not lest ye be not judged. So the additional not thrown, the additional negative thrown in there. Now, I have to pause and tell you what it is now, because I certainly don't remember this in doing my research, but this doesn't even relate to the story I was about to tell regarding this Mandela effect and what happened to me in doing the research years ago. So now it's judge not that ye be not judged. What? Guys, I don't look. Okay, of course, if in this example, if you're on the frequency with a reality, you're going to say, of course, it's always been that. What are you talking about? That's how the Mandela effect works. But here's where it gets really freaky. Let me present the old story and then what just happened to me 10 minutes ago, which is very similar to the old story. So years ago, guys, these aren't anchor effects for me. I like to research the Bible changes, or those that say there are Bible changes from the Mandela effect. I like to find the residuals to see the contradictions. And that's exactly what I found with Matthew 7. So I found a website, and I'm sure it probably doesn't even exist or it's all been changed. And this, again, we're still on the segment of this presentation where you can't pin anybody down. You never get anybody to react to the Mandela effect. I was researching Judge Not, Lest Ye Be Judged, and I found a website that was talking about, well, what did Jesus mean in the sermon? And throughout the website, a big, huge website on different Christian and KJV passages, he kept quoting Jesus with quotes, saying, when Jesus said, quote, "Judge not, lest ye be judged," end quote. And this was in several segments. And maybe in one part, it said it, quote, correctly, "Judge not, lest ye be not judged," with the extra "not." So at the bottom was, his website and his email address, and it was a smaller, it was a very professional website, but it was presented by one or two individuals. So I emailed the person, and I said, well, you're obviously referring to KJV, King James Version, like you say. You can't be you're quoting the wrong, you can't quote Jesus incorrectly. You can't, and it was in quotes. He's not saying, well, most people just, Matt, the interpretation, whether you put the last "not" in or not, is the same. People know what Jesus is saying. He was quoting Jesus. You can't really quote, you're quoting incorrectly. That's kind of a big deal. So instead of the person coming back to me via email saying, wow, I didn't realize I did this, or yeah, if I'm going to quote Jesus, I should reflect the actual words in the KJV, the website started to change. I went out there a day or two later, and in the quotes where it no longer said "Judge not, lest ye be judged," it said it quote correctly, "Judge not, lest ye be not judged." And so, okay, I'm like, well, the person must have gotten my email because they're correcting it. Well, why don't they just you can never interact with these people. That's what's so bizarre about it. And I hope I'm getting this. This has been a real big deal with me. I don't know if I'm communicating this properly. But the person could have even emailed me back and said, I didn't, hey, I got it wrong. I'm going to change it. Thanks for your input. Nothing. You can never interact with these people. But the website just starts to change. Well, he must have gotten my email. So still, though, in part of the bottom is in discussing what Jesus meant. This is with no quotes, just in the paragraph. In discussing what Jesus meant by "Judge not, lest ye be judged," I'm like, well, he's still getting it wrong. I'm like, whatever. You can never interact with these people. All right. Well, here's what happened this morning. I go and I'm like, remember, let me just check it, So I look at, Bible Gateway or whatever. "Judge not, that ye be not judged." And I went, that? I could have sworn. Look, I was positive when I did this research on Matthew 7. The only difference was the additional "not." "Judge not, lest ye be judged. Judge not, lest ye be not judged." Which, people would say, it's nothing. But it does totally change the meaning if you want to break it down. I swear I would have remembered, this is new to me. I would have, okay, maybe I would have remembered, but it says, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." Okay, maybe I got it wrong. I'm not perfect. But here's the thing. The only other research I did this morning, let me drag the microphone over to this other laptop that I have open. The only other research I did this morning is the only other website I went to is from daily.jstor.org, and the / it says "Understanding a Misunderstood Bible Verse," but it just says NDER, standing. That's weird. Whatever. "Understanding a Misunderstood Bible Verse" by JSTOR Daily. Okay? Big, huge font. "Understanding a Misunderstood Bible Verse." Quote. Right at the top, there's a whole picture of Jesus. It says, quote, "Judge not, lest ye be judged," end quote. Just like it happened years ago. Now this comes, it says right on the website here, this comes from a Sermon on the Mount, from the Sermon on the Mount, of course, in Matthew 5-7 of the King James Bible. And he's referencing here King James Bible. How has it become a harmless aphorism? So he's, again, another website quotes Jesus incorrectly, and completely incorrectly, because it still incorporates lest ye be judged, L-E-S-T. It's right in, I just pulled out my old King James, or was my grandmother's. That, it says that. So this person is again, this has happened to me again, what happened to me 3 or 4 years ago. Person's having a whole article from a very, very well-produced website, and they don't even know the verse. I mean, this shit happens over and over with the Mandela effect. Then it says, when they blah, 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 lower it says, here's another quote, judge not lest ye be judged. Again, then the not is not in there, and that is not in there. And it says, that sentence, of course, comes from the Sermon on the Mount. No, it doesn't, because it says right in my old King James, judge not that ye be not judged. Anyway, guys, I don't see this. These residuals to me are so strong, unless you think, person after person just got it wrong, website after website just got it wrong, time after time. See, and if it follows suit, what will happen here is, I'm not going to do it in this case. I'm done with this stuff. If I emailed JSTOR, they wouldn't get back to me and be like, oh my gosh, how do we make that mistake? And it would just slowly start to change and reflect reality correctly. Like, because I noticed it, I don't know how to describe it. For those that are Mandela affected, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, this introduces a completely new section, completely new chapter, major section number 2. We will ponder what it is, the Mandela effect, but this section is, let's just get out of the way what it's not. Now, do I know for sure I'm some sort of Q from Star Trek, omnipotent? No, but I'm pretty sure, guys, these are very dumbed-down approaches to understanding the Mandela effect. So here we go, what it's not. It's not time travel. Oh, boy, if I hear that. If it was time travel, and as the person, the man and woman that wrote the Bernstein Bears, you'd swap their birth certificate, or it was of course it was Bernstein Bears, but a time traveler went in and swapped the birth certificate and they became Bernstein, then there would be consistency then after that. You wouldn't have all these residuals, if you see what I'm saying. You wouldn't find patents submitted to the patent office and copyright office on behalf of Bernstein, C-E-I-N. You wouldn't have residuals on Steen everywhere if a time traveler went back and per day one changed it. Where would the residuals come from? There's too many residuals for them all to be mistakes. That's part of the main thing that the Mandela effect researchers hang their hat on, is when you get into thousands upon thousands of residual evidence that the old reality existed, how many thousands do you need before it's just no longer a mistake? A big one to me, an anchor effect, is the bodybuilder, Mr. Olympia, who followed Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was into that back in the late 80s. Franco Columbu with an O. Now, the residuals slowly disappear. But when I first did the hardcore research, there's all these booksellers selling he was a doctor of chiropractic. He's dead now. Doctor of chiropractic, did nutrition books, whatever. All these booksellers are promoting his book as Franco Columbu. Different websites, Matt, they're all tied into the same bot. No, they weren't, okay, in my initial research. Some are, I hear you. But no, they weren't. Talking about Franco Columbu's book, and the cover is right there that says Columbu, C-O-L-U-M-B-U. The book cover, so it wasn't like, oh, I found one mistake on a website talking about Franco Columbu. There was like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I have a DVD, a Blu-ray DVD from a movie that Franco Columbu appeared in, or Columbu, sorry, it's always been Columbu. He didn't change his name. It's always been that way. I have a DVD of where it's some 2-bit movie that starred Franco Columbu, ex-Mr. Olympia. You got Schwarzenegger to do a cameo. And right on the Blu-ray, the DVD, it says Franco Columbu, right on the box. So the DVD got it. You heard me talk about this. The DVD box printed the name of the star of the movie wrong. And of course that's possible. But then there's hundreds of other examples. So the reason I'm mentioning Franco Colombo, guys, is it's not time travel. It's not time travel. If some time traveler went back and swapped his birth certificate out and his name is Columbu, you wouldn't have hundreds of booksellers with getting his name wrong. It would be consistent. There might be a mistake here and there just from human error, but the residuals wouldn't come forth in the tens of thousands from a time traveler. It's just not possible. And for anybody interested, if you go search Colombo now in his books, again, these residuals, reality corrects itself. The residuals go away over time. I'm sure you could find some things, but not as nearly as many as when I first researched it, say 4 years ago. Okay, continuing what it's not, in my opinion. It's not totally of the cabal, targeted of the cabal, and completely targeted from CERN. It could be related to CERN, but see, the Mandela effects you notice, like a movie line or something what we've talked about, to me it's a symptom of something else, something much greater. So maybe the creeps, do I think CERN, which goes under 2 countries, this massive thing is just about smashing particles together to get a glimpse into the first nanosecond of how the universe was formed? Of course I don't believe in that horse shit. What a bunch of bullcrap. They're going to spend billions of dollars to wave all red tape between 2 countries that have the most red tape of all time, build under people's farms and homes, and then all that just to smash particles together to get a glimpse as to how the universe, and maybe discover a quark. I mean, come on. It's a joke. Who knows what they're doing, creepy stuff they're doing. And the Mandela effects is a residual of that, potentially. But it's not like people actually believe, like, George Bush walk into the CERN. What are we going to do today? Did you pat the Shiva statue? The Shiva, not Shiva. Did you pat the Shiva statue? They have a big Shiva statue going in the destruction dance, the destruction of all worlds dance. Oh, you're just in time, George Bush. Sit down. We're going to change the Kit Kat wrapper today. See, they're not that good. They might be screwing with reality, of which the symptom of it or the effect of it is a Mandela effects people can notice. Okay, we're going to spend a little bit of time on my favorite. Here it comes. Come on back in. Say into the microphone what you believe it is. We're all confabulation, misremembering. Come on, we're leaning into the mic. All right. It's a psyop. Say it again. Nobody heard you. Come on. It's a psyop, Matt. You're falling for a psyop. Oh, I never heard that one before. A psyop. It's amazing how I'm able to see through so many things in terms of what I've been doing here for 10 years, but I just fall down to this one. Just my gosh, all the research has just been deluding myself. It's a psyop. I heard you, it's a psyop. Get out of here. Get out. Go make me a tuna fish sandwich or something. It's not a psyop because the people that say psyop, they have the lousiest, crappiest, shittiest defenses in terms of to defend their psyop. Somebody emailed me the other day, and I think I replied. I wasn't sure exactly what they were saying. But I've heard this before, so I don't mean to pick on that person. I've heard this many times before. That say, well, Matt, with Dolly's braces, that was erased out. And I was a little sensitive the way they presented it, because if they meant reality itself overrode itself, like Dark City every night, reality itself changes, big buildings become small, janitors become executive vice presidents overnight, reality itself changes, and then everybody goes along with it. Kind of like, there's a lot of smart people that talk about reality changing and resetting itself all the time. If you're going there, I agree with you. Reality reset itself. That's generally what the Mandela effect is. And when it resets itself, everything per what you call the past changes as well. But if the person meant this, and this is what I've heard from the PSYOP people over and over again for years, and their idiot arguments, is that like somehow they got a hold of the master DVDs and they changed the DVDs. And that's just impossible, because people have old VHS tapes in their attic. And I remember the person after the Anne Rice thing, Interview with a Vampire, they went up into their attic and they pulled out all the old Anne Rice books. And they're like, look, they all say, now they say, the person saying Interview with the Vampire. And they're like, I read this book twice. This person says it was Interview with a Vampire. I'm completely Mandela affected. And then they were finding residuals, like I said, in other books. It's, read other Anne Rice books, Interview with a Vampire. Like, oh, so they're getting the promo in the other book of Anne Rice wrong. So you can find all this old stuff in the attic unless the cabal sent out their little teams of blue people and climbed into your attic like the ghoulies, over and just swapped out your videotapes. It's not when they say psyop, I don't understand. Like, they never have a good defense of that. We admit the Mandela effect. Admit you can't prove it outright. How could you prove something outright when you admit all of reality and all of the history associated with it back through time, and all of time reflects what exists today? You're proposing and putting forth something that there's no evidence at all other than the residuals. Other than when residuals get into the tens of thousands, they no longer make sense that there could even be that many residuals. When you have picture after picture of somebody posing in front of the thinker with their hand on their forehead, so you could see if one person got it wrong, but George Bernard Shaw and all these other people got it wrong, these residuals are impossible when you get as many as we have. So it's a psyop. People don't have really, they can't defend that. And even if they could, I would tell these people, in terms of these anchor effects, of which we have, we all have about 5 or so. Most of these things are not that strong anchors with all of us. We might say, yeah, I remember winds of change, but I wouldn't stake all my roulette chips on it. That's not an anchor effect. Wind of change sounds funny to me. Seals and Crofts sounds funny to me. That's another one where Greg and I did a tremendous amount of research. Summer breeze makes me feel fine. Seals and Croft was clearly. We found 100 YouTube videos where the YouTube video was titled Seals and Croft. And guys, I guarantee now you could still find some. What exists today is Seals and Crofts, S and S, plural and plural. But the residuals slowly go away as the reality works to correct itself. How does that happen? And I'm putting it that way because I have no other way to put it. We found hundreds of seals, just Summer Breeze by itself. Seals, and I think the number one video now that presents the old lake video from the 70s still says Seals and Croft. It's the number one video for Summer Breeze. It might be, is it Lake Tahoe? I don't know, but it has that 70s feel to it. We found hundreds of those. And if anything were real, there'd be a few people that made the mistake, put Seals and Crofts, but there wouldn't be hundreds. And then as you go back, the reality works to correct itself. The residuals slowly go away. So the point is, guys, even if somebody can scream psyop, and those that have certain anchor effects can just, why do we need to convince these people? We'd say, look, I know what I know. It's as simple as I know what my middle name is. There's nobody that's going to change my mind on that. If somebody presents a birth certificate that says my middle name is George, well, I don't care. I understand all the history reflects, and all the old pictures of my old dog and my old cats reflect that they were all black. But I know what my dog was. It's that clear. If you had a dog in high school and it was a yellow lab, is there any way that you would misremember that? And that's what an anchor effect is. And somebody could show you, here's pictures of your high school graduation. There's your dog, and it's black. Who cares what pictures you're showing me? I don't care what you show me. The memory is all we have anymore in this fake-ass world. So I don't give a shit what. That's why I don't put any stock into video evidence. And people say, Matt, look at this video from the 7-Eleven job application. Who cares? Anything can be faked. And to me, reality itself, in a fluid reality, pulls this shit off. It's beyond, just men and women, doing something to, what did they do in Rising Sun? Eddie Sakamura, they showed, or they try to pin it on Eddie Sakamura. It's like Johnny Camerari, they try to pin on Eddie Sakamura. That is John Mellencamp's wife in the beginning. That is John Mellencamp's wife in the beginning. Eddie Sakamura, he wishes Eddie Sakamura. They try to, it's just manipulation and everything. No, it's not all. The reality itself sees to it. That's a cop-out, Matt, because you can't explain it. You try explaining that. It's like all the masks all the old pictures of 1918, the Spanish event. All these old pictures now, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of old pictures show everybody in a mask. I don't buy it. I don't, whether they're faked or reality itself saw to it, or it's a retrocausality. When I did the research, the hardcore research, when this thing first started, very, very few pictures of people regarding the 1918 event in a mask. Now they're all over the place. And that could be a more, Matt, don't get too complicated. That is a simple psyop. That's the cabal filtering those images out through Google Images, they want everybody to believe that they all did that. You're right. It could be that simple. I'm not saying a metaphysical reality breakdown when it could be as simple. That would be simple for them to plant that in. I'm just saying it's not always the case. Continuing with, at least in my opinion, what it's not, hear people say, well, Matt, this is a fluid reality video game, virtual reality, and it's maxing out its processing power. It's breaking down, and I don't buy it. I don't buy it. If it was that simple, first of all, it puts reality in terms we can understand. You know, people the wonders of this world, reality, existence, and people are going to always try to put it into terms they understand, like processing power. And Matt, well, even you did a video where I was just trying to make a comparison to how the reality works using a computer as the basis of the comparison. People literally come forth with the Mandela effect and say, well, like the processing power is being maxed out and then it's glitching. I don't buy it for a lot of reasons because of how Goldilocks it is, how subtle it is. You know something's changed, but you can never prove it. It's never blatant, like Mr. T becoming Mr. F. If it was glitching out, then the mistakes would be radical mistakes. Hillary Clinton would come to take a podium during the whatever that mock election was with Donald Trump, and she would come to the podium with two heads or something bizarre, or she would turn into the Kraken by the end of it wouldn't be like the subtle little, if it was processing power was glitching, then the entire Golden Gate Bridge would disappear as cars were driving over it in San Francisco rush hour going over to Mill Valley. There'd be major problems if the processing power was being taxed. It would be this perfect, subtle, so do I think the Mandela effect, like a lot of people do, is this message to us from God or from our higher selves to wake us up, to move us to the next phase of truth, evolution, spiritual evolution? I don't know. I don't put my chips there either, but I would think that is much more likely than it's just the processing power glitching out. So, if that was the case, half the Atlantic would disappear and be back by 2:00. I don't, at least the simple way I can comprehend it. But just people putting forth the processing power is being taxed. That's it's just obviously it's a lot more complicated, and just putting it into computer terms we can understand. Next major section, but this section very, very brief. Even if you don't have hardcore anchor effects, you just sense things are changing, something's not right. I mean, what gives it away? What gives it away that there's really something going on here from a circumstantial evidence perspective? If you have a hardcore anchor effect, again, the Mandela effect that people know, that's all you need to know. I mean, that's all you need to see. Somebody that knows it was the lion laid down with the lamb, and they remember every bit of that as a kid reading KJV or whatever. They don't need to be convinced. They know 100%. But anybody that does, there's still things where you should still probably entertain that something's going on here. So the inferior new reality is, if you're not quite sure, every single time this tends to happen, what's produced is inferior. Every time you get a sense that there could be a change in earth as it is in heaven. In earth? What? It's always this way. So it's like, wait a second. It can't always be worse. Something's going on here. So that's one. The residuals come in a big time way after the change is noticed, but then you go back 2 years later or 4 years later, they're all disappearing. There's not nearly as many Lion and the Lamb references. They were everywhere when we first started noticing. And then the reality, for lack of better words, the reality somehow works overtime to remove them, to cover up the footprints. So residuals disappearing, for those that have been through that exercise, or if you trust me or others that have done Mandela effect research, that they absolutely the residuals become harder to find, whether that's Google hiding them or something like the reality hiding them, gives it away that something, in fact, is really going on here. The subtleness, it's always Goldilocks, it's always right down the middle. I mean, that, again, these are things you can apply to understanding reality itself. And the last one that I'd love to talk about is the download in people. And my neighbor here, he wasn't real Mandela affected, but he agreed with me, and I'll keep it under 1 minute. He saw Tony take the download. I asked him all the Mandela effect questions, and he answered all the way we would want him to answer. Oh yeah, Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates. Yeah, go on. And then he paused, and he blue screened, glitched out or something. He paused for a second or two, and he went, I'm going to change that answer. And then, if you build it, they will come. I'm going to change that answer. He changed all his answers, on the fly. And it's and then I went to Chris. I said, he just took a download. Did you see that? He's like, yeah. He's and this guy's not even a conspiracy guy. He's like, why would he change all his answers like that? He took some sort of download. So to me, this one event, has springboarded my whole framework of how I analyze reality, and putting things in the context that people are actually taking a download. And yeah, I've only blatantly witnessed it once, but then I didn't even know something like that was possible. Once you start applying that theory, and that could be happening, then as you apply that to how society works and how human beings in society works, that explanation, in other words, the evidence pops out once you put that possibility on the table. So, it's not possible for me to keep experiencing people directly taking a download. But then if you put it on the table, or it's your realm of possibilities that some people can take a download to sync onto the frequency and do what the reality wants, then a whole lot of things start making sense, if you understand what I'm saying. If you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. Okay, last major section. Well, what is it then? What is it? I'll take my best guess. We've been looking at it long enough. We're allowed to try to pin the tail on the donkey. And you've heard me talk a lot about Dark City recently. Look, people are too focused on the actual Mandela effects or the Kit Kat Dash or whatever personally affected them. I think it's important to realize it's a symptom or a manifestation of something much, much bigger. So if your car is making little knocking sounds, the idea is to say, well, what's the big problem that's causing the knocking sounds? The transmission? Did I put the wrong octave in? It's just the knocking of a car. It's the symptom of something much, much larger. And you can apply the as above, so below, as below, so above, microcosm, macrocosm, fractal reality principles that, okay, if these things are changing before our very eyes, and I think, guys, before I get into really what it is, I need to give the examples where literally reality has changed before people's very eyes, including my own stories. I think I need to do that first, but I don't want to pause now. Let me just continue the basics of what I think it is. I think it's a symptom of how reality itself works. You'd say, okay, this is how the Mandela effect works. Why wouldn't I think this is just giving away to me how the whole reality works? To me, is like Dark City. It does change. It resets. Does it reset every second? Does it reset every day? Who knows? Who knows? We'll never know. But at some point, things change. Time is an illusion. Time doesn't exist. A linear time, and we can only affect the future. That's just some game your idiot senses play on you. To me, it's like, major events can ripple back and ripple forward. If you're Mandela affected, you see that the changes reflect back through all of time, with the exception of residuals, which to me, the residuals, if it was this perfect reality where then everything would immediately reset, it wouldn't make mistakes. To me, residuals are mistakes, and then it seems to try to work at correcting the mistakes or the residuals. But the residual is such a big factor. If you're going to make a determination or a best guess as to what the Mandela effect is, you have to use the huge, you have to use what we're given. And the residuals are just so overwhelming that has to be a factor in trying to figure out what the Mandela effect is. So I don't think if you're Mandela affected for a Kit Kat Dash, you remember the thinker like George Bernard Shaw did, putting his fist to his forehead, that doesn't mean that, then you can see through everything. If you can see one thing, you can see them all. I don't think so. I think a lot of things reset, change. And the human being just goes along with the changes. The human being is reset. I've been reset to new reality. This like Dark City, the person falls asleep in their bowl of soup, and that's just an analogy. They're not really falling asleep in their bowl of soup, and they wake up and now they're in a whole new job, and their house has changed, and their linens have changed. And the Dark City is an analogy to, I think, how things are really working. Things are probably changing all the time, and we're not seeing 99% or millions of things we don't see. We just say, it just seems like, there was an old show called Mr. Ed. It was like a talking horse or a talking mule or whatever, the Mr. Ed show, and that's always been around. And that, I'm saying it's possible that might have been around just as of today. In other words, reality reset, and part of the reality reset is now the Mr. Ed show existed. I mean, it's a bad example, but it seems like us, it's always been there. Who knows? Maybe it wasn't there yesterday. I'm saying there's probably thousands or tens of thousands of things where we're going along with it. Just because we can see through one thing, we don't see through it all. But there's certain things, for whatever reason, this is where we're called anchor effects that are close to certain people. Certain things where it just is too blatant, where we say, wait a second, I know that wasn't like that in my old reality. But the key point here is, just because I can see, if I'm sure about my 5 anchors, and I should tell you what my 5 anchors are, I guess, at the end. If I'm sure, that doesn't mean I can see through every Mandela effect and there could be thousands of things a second resetting if you want to think big enough in reality. And we're all going along with it. Well, how would that work, Matt? I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of shit we're not going to figure out in this avatar. You know how dumb coming into the avatar, the body, this how foggy the brain is. You can't remember what you had for breakfast. You know how dumb this incarnation is, or what you agreed to. I mean, talk about fighting an uphill battle in terms of trying to become intelligent. In addition to that, the poisons in the water, the fluoride, the dumbing of. I mean, it's just we're so dumb in this incarnation, and we're fighting against everything they do here to make us dumber. They're trying to make us dumber. So it's so hard to. There's so many unanswered questions that we're never going to understand until we get out of here. So, Matt, take DMT. You'll be able to see everything. How do you know that's not part of the reality trick? People are so sure, they take the DMT and their ayahuasca, and they're so sure that that's what's real. Like sending them into some sort of dreamscape. Like, so the reality is so dumb that it's getting basically everything perfect. A few mistakes like the Mandela effect and fake, really bad catastrophe thespians with bang bang events. But the reality is going to be so dumb, the whole trick of this reality, that all you got to do is pop a certain pill and then you'll be able to see through everything. Does that make sense? I mean, maybe. Matt, you've never done it, so you don't know. Maybe. But it's also, can you at least keep on the table that that's also part of the trick? And the reality, maybe you didn't just outsmart it. Maybe it knows what it can present to you, maybe, when you put that substance in. Just keep it on the table. It's right. I mean, I don't know, but I know enough to keep both sides on the table. The people that say there's just a pure insight into reality taking ayahuasca or DMT, well, how would you know that? Of course it seems that way, but when you're in a dream, it seems real too. So whatever, we could go round and round on this shit forever. As of now, there is no correlation between, in my opinion, spiritual progression and understanding the true nature of yourself, or seeing through the lie and ruse of society and the presentation through the media and government. And if you can see fake events on the news, there doesn't seem to be any correlation. And I really would hope there was. But people could come over here and they say, Matt, the 7-Eleven job application, that morning I saw right through it. And this and that. And they see through everything, even maybe years before I did, many years before I did. And they just say, I'm just not Mandela affected. You guys make some compelling arguments. I consider myself to be open-minded, but I just can't go there. There's no correlation. It doesn't mean there's a certain segment of the Mandela effect community be like, we're the highest level. If you're Mandela affected, then you really are. You're spiritually higher than everybody else, and there's no evidence of that. We all bring different things to the table, perceptions. People that I've corresponded with, they can can see auras and they do different things, and I don't bring those things to the table, but I bring different things. We all bring different things to the table, and it's just there's no somebody that's Mandela effect can't be like, oh, I'm more advanced down the sliding scale than others in the truth community. No evidence of that as of this point. What can we do? What should we do? Well, if certain changes of reality are appearing to those that are Mandela affected, I don't think we should run from it. I think we should do just the opposite. We should tell ourselves, train ourselves, have the conscious mind talk to the unconscious or subconscious mind, that there are changes occurring here all the time. And, senses and avatar and body and all aspects of what I call Matt. I want to notice these things, and I want to notice more of these things, and tell yourself that. And if something changes, I want to remember what once was, especially if it has to do with the whole trick of this reality to keep a human being from understanding its true nature. Just keep telling yourself that you have the ability to perceive these things, and if something doesn't sit right, you'll notice it, or you'll at least get a gut feeling that something isn't right or something isn't changed. It's similar to how I say, like, the refining of the process to read the matrix code. I usually don't know ultimately what their goals or aims are, but I can very quickly sniff it out and say this presentation of Simone Biles or whatever, or within 1 minute. And this is again what happened in Florida with the condominiums was so planned that I shouldn't be patting myself on the back, but you know what I'm saying. Like, we can sniff out this stuff now in 30 seconds. That's called reading the matrix code. And I say, well, what does it say? I don't know. I don't know exactly what the creeps are up to all the time. I can just sniff it out immediately that it's a false presentation. You can train yourself to not only see through the reality ruse, but potentially see more of these reality shifts, reality changes. Keep telling yourself that you have the ability to see this and to notice and to remember what once was. And it takes time, but it feeds off itself, and you'll hone your skills to be able to, more and more things will be put into the right place, if I describe that properly. From the day you were born, everything in terms of this society, the K through 12 system, has bred you to be a zombie, has pushed you to its frequency. We think we're off and we've escaped, but it's likely we have a ton of work to do, a ton more work to do to really separate ourselves from everything that the zombification that the society and the culture has done to us. So you have to imagine, your perception, keep telling yourself, it's not at the final level. You're at level 1. Tell yourself you have 10 more levels in terms of sight, the sight of what's not right in the world, of truth, of understanding yourself. There's so much more to learn, and keep telling yourself every day to hone your senses and your perceptions to be able to refine all of this stuff. And then the whole ruse of the reality through its culture and society will melt and melt away to much greater degrees. We think we've kind of won now. I think there's a whole lot more we can do here. Okay, if what I just presented doesn't make a whole lot of sense, let's just look at one simple example. Would you agree, if I ask you this question, would you agree that this system here, is trying to move a human being closer to technology or away from technology? Well, it's the simplest question of all time. Of course, technology taking over for everything. You can't even decide on your own to buy your own milk. Your refrigerator will order it. People merging with their phones with their head in it. Of course, it's a middle step or a first few steps towards actually merging with the machine, merging with the technology. And Johnny Depp So, Matt, why did you ask such a simple question? Let's just sometimes focusing on the obvious is the biggest revelations. Of course, they can't put the phone into your brain right now, but putting the phone up to your ear is getting close. They want everybody moving closer to that. Now, would you say, of course, that moving towards the digital, moving human beings and your life towards the digital, towards technology, towards human augmentation, or whatever they're going to do, chip you up, do you think that would help your perception of seeing through the ruse of reality, of seeing through reality, dark city changes? Do you think it would help you see the fluid reality and what's really here? Or do you think it would put you, or it would hide those things, what the culture or society or the powers that be, or if you will, of course, moving anybody close to technology will hide these abilities or kill these abilities. So it's pretty simple that, what is moving a human being closer to everything technology? What is that? Why do they want to do that? And, ultimately, if we're not sure, the answer is always the same thing: to keep or to hide the real nature of a human being from itself. There's a big theme in this reality about how technology relates to magic. And it's not, of course, it goes back to the same old thing, Arthur C. Clarke, there's no difference between high tech and magic. We've all heard that a million times ad nauseum. But the theme to notice is why is the technology taking over for the magic? And it's even presented in the new horrible He-Man animation, or Masters of the Universe, where the magic of whatever that realm is fading, and then in whatever her name is, who now has replaced He-Man as the star of that show, she has technology. I've only seen a few episodes, but the technology as a replacement to the magic. What is again, we're straying a little bit off the original Mandela effect purpose for this video, but what's the purpose of that? I mean, the technology, I think, even though Arthur C. Clarke says they're indistinguishable in terms of how the creeps can use them, the technology is more foolproof. If they can get people to merge with their technologies, then that completely removes a human being from its spiritual side, and maybe its bridge out of here. Where maybe in the past they didn't have the technology, but they had the magic, which, you could just say the reality buttons and levers, then they probably, you could say they've hidden that from the masses, or they'll never tell you in school what your real abilities could be in K through 12. But if they're still using their magic, that's something that anybody can go and tap into. That's something that they would probably want to use in the back room without telling people that just being born a real spirited human being, you have magical abilities. It's just, there's no other way to describe it. There's nothing, the ability to see right through a ruse on the news for 30 seconds to a degree is a magical ability. There's nothing evil about that. It's not good or bad by definition. It's how it's used. So to me, moving people closer, if they didn't have the technology to replace the magic, then as people wake up, they can get their hands on those types of tools and start using those types of tools. Where if they get everybody just completely merging with the technology, then I think, they've got you. They've pinned you on the frequency, locked the prison cell door, and thrown away the key. And with the ultimate terminus of that being dopes that will actually allow themselves to be brain chipped one day, and people that might actually, want to merge consciousness with computers and all that Ray Kurzweil creepy stuff we've heard about for so long. Okay, real quick regarding the book of Matthew, Greg called me back. I had called him. He's extremely familiar with KJV. I don't know if he was close to doing seminary school. I mean, he knows, but he didn't. I mean, that's how. So Greg knows his KJV, and he said what I thought he would say. He's like, of course, it's. I didn't realize there potentially is another change, or he thought 100% another change. As everybody remembers, of course, judge not, lest ye be judged. Simple. The not is a Mandela effect, according to Greg. Absolutely does not remember it being there. It makes no sense. It introduces a double negative. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Makes sense. If you judge, you're going to get judged. Judge not, lest ye be not judged. That was the original Mandela effect, that extra not. So if you do this, it's basically what it before the Mandela effect. If you do this, you're going to get it back. And, but now that you put the not in, it says, if you do this, you're not going to get it back. It doesn't make any sense. So you get into things regarding KJV Mandela effects. Well, why wouldn't they have been corrected over the years? All these obvious mistakes, run together sentences that go half a page long. Why wouldn't all of this have been corrected at some point via a consensus of who prints the the new international version or versus the KJV versus the Wycliffe versus the whatever? None of these things that even people call Mandela effects, but some people that don't believe the Mandela effects say, well, that's just a mistake. Well, then why wasn't it corrected over the past 300 years? Anyway, Greg agrees. He knows KJV as well as anybody. That not was put in there. Judge not, lest ye be not judged. Makes no sense. And then I told him about the that, and he's like, you've got to be kidding me. Judge not. Forget the lest. One of the most important words or defining words of that verse was lest. Judge not lest. He said, no, it's gone. And I pulled out my old KJV and looked, and it's gone. Judge not that ye be not judged. That. At least it didn't, insert. It likes to, the Mandela effect will insert words like unicorn and bake meats. At least it didn't. It's using at least just a normal word that. But Greg's like, no. It was lest. Obviously, I'm going on and on and on. Sorry, but certainly looks like. So I guess we'll add to the rules in the Mandela effect. Just because there's been a change doesn't mean it's not going to change again. And wouldn't that lead one to believe maybe these changes in reality itself happen a whole lot more frequency than just what we believe or what we notice? Okay, my Mandela effects, or my anchors, in other words, where I just know. Some seem trivial, whatever. Interview with a vampire. 100%. Not 99, whatever. It was interview with a vampire versus the 100%. The Mona Lisa is an anchor to me, but I'm not as confident as Interview with a Vampire. She didn't smile. There's a crack of a smile, a definite crack of a smile. The whole point in the Mona Lisa breakdown and analysis was, is she smiling or not? And it usually looked like she wasn't. It's pretty clear that a side of her face is smiling now. It's crystal clear. There wouldn't be the huge less filling tastes great debates for decade after decade after decade about the Mona Lisa if it's as clear as it is now. The debate wasn't, are both sides of her face smiling? No, is she smiling at all, which she is now. Australia is, to me, as big as Interview with a Vampire. The first time I looked at it on the map after somebody mentioned it as a Mandela effect, I just absolutely absurd. It is like the entire Earth, whatever it is, just everything smushed together. Everything got closer for some reason. And I'm not going to get into this Sagittarius Earth and Orion Earth. I don't know where that stuff comes from. I have some issues with that. I mean, I don't, you might have certain, to present that, I don't understand why people go there. Is it just related to the mistake Neil deGrasse Tyson made or whatever? I just wouldn't go there. We don't, the Earth, the solar system, the Milky Way, the presentation of space, in my opinion, of course it's not what they say it is or what the science books say. So even just referencing Mandela effect things like, no, this is their Orion Earth, it implies the presentation of the Carl Sagan presentation of space is what they say it is, which anyway, sorry. So Australia, it's like the whole Earth smushed together. And there are other effects on the map that are like South America should be directly under. From my recollection, this is basically an anchor effect for me, not as big as Australia. With Australia being on the latitude line of Brazil is absurd to me. It literally looks comical. Not as if you smushed it under Alaska, but it's almost that ridiculous, even though in the first part of this presentation I talked about how subtle it is. Cuba being this gigantic, humongous landmass that you almost look like in a one day you could sail off the tip of Cuba to Mexico or to Belize. And I don't know, it just looks like a short little half a day sail or something. Cuba is this huge presence that basically cuts off the Gulf of Mexico and it almost extends over to Mexico. It's just certain that's not quite an anchor, but it does look ridiculous to me. I have other map issues too, like the boot of Italy kicking, is it Sardinia or whatever? But these are the major ones. I have other issues, but I can't call them anchors. Dolly braces, it was 100% Dolly had braces. That is absolutely 100%. Mr. Rogers, I never liked it, but I watched it every day for years because, I don't know, for some reason, everybody watched Sesame Street when you're 5 years old or growing up in the 70s. But I liked the Electric Company, which in Philadelphia came on after Mr. Rogers. So it was Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, the Electric Company. So what else? We didn't have PlayStation back then or Xbox. You had to sit through the shows you don't like to get to the ones you did. Watched every single episode, of course. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood was what everybody remembers. To me, it's 100%. Today, if anybody's not sure, you don't know this one, it's A Beautiful Day in This Neighborhood, which is very exclusive or discriminatory or, snobbish. In other words, Mr. Rogers saying, it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, which implies yours sucks rocks. This neighborhood's great. Yours sucks. I mean, that's basically what it's saying. The opposite of inclusive. But then you get into, with the Mandela effect, you get into all sorts of weird things that isn't the last time I looked, wasn't the Tom Hanks movie titled Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood? So every single time I think I said this to my mother. And when you say, if you give Mandela effect things to certain, they just simply turn off. They literally go blue screen. They want away from, they're on the download, they're on the frequency. They want to get away from the conversation as quickly as possible. And then I was trying to talk to my mother. I said, well, I think I asked her, what do you remember? And of course, everybody says, even those on the frequency will say, yeah, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. They all say it right initially until they take the download. And the download will overwrite their reality. Either they'll then say, like Tony, they'll sync up to the current reality and they'll change their answer. No, I'm going to change my mind. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. Or the other part of the download is they'll just run from the topic. That's what my mother did. I don't want to talk about this anymore or this. And I said, well, wait a second. Don't you think it's odd? First of all, he never said that. Well, I don't know. Do you remember all the episodes? I'm like, yeah, we've looked into it. He never said it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. He never said what people remember. Okay, forget that. I said, don't you think it's odd that the Tom Hanks movie, it's titled? The last time I looked, maybe it changed, but I'm not going to look up now. I've got it in this video. I think the Tom Hanks movie is called Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. So I said to her, why would you title a movie so the movie people didn't even know what the most famous and iconic part of the song is? They got it wrong, and they just blue screen. They don't want to talk about it. Oh, I don't know. That's you and your conspiracy. And then they just, want to, I don't know, walk around the corner and then pretend it never happened. That's the other download effect. It's like, engage with new reality answer and argue vehemently for it has always been this, or just run away. It's like a video game selection. Run away. And that's what a lot of people do as well. The A-Team is a big one for me. Don't remember no half gray van, but is that an anchor? Could I have missed it? Watching every single episode of the A-Team is my favorite show in 7th grade because I have missed it, maybe. But the funny thing about there's always these residuals. There's all sorts of toys that you can buy that are all black. So you're going to spend the time to produce a toy, get a Chinese manufacturer to manufacture, do all this stuff with a toy, try to get it in to Kitty City. They don't have any more Toys R Us or whatever they have now. In my day, it was Kitty City. You're going to do all this work, and you're going to get it wrong. You have to even license it from the owners who own the A-Team, whatever TV studio. So you're going to get it wrong. A lot of the toys are still all black. It's just weird. Now, if you look now, most are gray. But when you first did the research, the residuals were all over the place. The residuals, as I say, slowly disappear over time, which is a reality, giveaway in and of itself. You want to determine what this reality is all about. So what's the last few here? Sally Field or Fields, whatever it is. That's not, I don't know what her name was, Reeve or Reeves. I'm talking about what she said after she won the Oscar. And this to me is 100% anchor. She said, you like me. You really like me. Ah! Now she says, somebody's crying out like, what does she say now? She says, you like me right now. You like me. Or she says, right now, the right now. People are like, what? And there's been so many memes. I mean, even there's still tremendous residuals on this. The reality can't correct all this stuff. It's even in The Mask, or The Mask, the movie with is it Jim Carrey? And there's all these memes, quotes from TV shows, quotes from movies where they make fun of it. And they go, you like me. You really like me. So the Mandela Effect haters, I'd say to them, so every movie that quotes her got it wrong. Every TV show got it wrong. And then, of course, they'd have a way. It's Goldilocks reality. They'd always have a way to latch on to what the part that they want to latch on. There's Matt, don't you understand how things work? Once, just like Luke, I am your father. Once something gets out and is actually more accepted than what's actually in the movie, then that becomes mainstream. They would always have a way to explain it away. They're always going to be able to call forth a script. So, just think of when you were trying to convince people about how fake the news presentation is on this thing now, or what Jeff Bezos didn't do, and we don't expect them to see the Mandela effect, right? We don't get upset at them. So I don't think there's really any difference in terms of they can't see the fake events on the news. Everything's completely normal with how they're presenting and going about the sea. We shouldn't get upset at them either, because it's the same thing, in my opinion. How they're, hopefully the people around us are real soul and spirited beings, but how they're interpreting it through the filter is no different than the Mandela effect. Just, they can't see that, so why get upset at them when they can't see that the kid got it in the neck and then he went out and pitched? To me, there's really no difference. It's just understanding how reality itself works. So I'm not going to get upset at anybody because I know they can't see the Mandela effect. When we first started talking to people about the Mandela effect, it was 2016 when it hit hard. We were kind of really miffed at people. Like, what do you mean? Like, we couldn't understand where some of their answers were coming from. We know so much more now. We were saying, I remember being in the car driving back from a restaurant in 2016. My mother, my stepfather, I guess Pam went out with us. My mother takes Pam out once or twice a year. And I said, okay, everybody knows this one. I said, my stepfather, John, you grew up in Catholic school. What animal lies down with the lamb? He's like, I don't know. The lion. I said, the lion and the lamb. I don't know. It was all vague to him. He's like, I don't know. I'm like, what? Like, we didn't realize. We thought everybody would be able to see, but we learned very quickly. Almost nobody could see, and it was tough. It was very tough on us for about a year. So it's just understanding that. What are you talking about? You don't remember this, because it was these anchor effects were so clear to us. One part of the ME that people just dismiss as being trivial is all the spelling mistakes. And to me, this is much more big or significant than the people that'll quickly blow it off. And I'm not just talking about Febreze. I'm talking about, let me present this the right way. When you have old brands like Tidy Bowl, okay, Tidy Bowl is, what is it? TY-D- I had to look it up. That's when I'm turning my head. BOL. TY-D-BOL. And I guess you look into this, and it's always been TY-D-BOL? Just BOL, not bowl? See, here's the problem. There's a percentage of people going, well, what's the problem? The problem is you have to understand, I'll use that underage 35 thing again. Before the internet, the yellow pages was everything. You would never intentionally misspell your brand unless it was just humongous aid in your marketing. You'd never do it because people would find you via the yellow pages. It would just cause a whole host of problems misspelling something. And it's not just Tidy Bowl. There's Whiteout. Is it Whiteout? Now or W-I-T. It's still white. W-I-T-E. Now, look, I've used that product. I grew up, practicing in junior high, and in high school and everything. We used Whiteout. We'd actually use Whiteout correction. My mother was a secretary, and I remember being in her when I was sick or an in-service day, I couldn't go to school. I had to go along to work with her, and the Whiteout, I would use it, and it was all over the desk. To me, it was always W-H-I-T-E. I can't say that's an anchor effect, but this is just a phenomenon of if you have an old brand that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years before the internet, you would never, and I mean never, intentionally spell it wrong. I mean, is it Whiteout? It's literally a white product, W-H-I-T-E. It whites out the white paper. There's no reason in the world you would ever choose to make your company name WITE-out. And apparently it's always been that. WITE-out. Somebody in the initial meetings would be like, wait a second, they're not going to find us in the yellow pages, or suppliers could have issues. It was all done via alphabetical order and records, and how they might, everybody, how many tens of thousands of people to find the name of the company, or even, the whiteout is at this convention in New York City in hotels, or you're going to constantly struggle to find the company, the group, because everybody's going to resort to WHITE. You would never choose a misspelling, never, from a marketing perspective, unless it was just massively important to your sales effort. And you could offset the 10 to the 10 power hassle it would be in terms of people not finding you, or at least initially turning to the wrong pages of the yellow pages. Or again, it's not just about, well, Matt, somebody's screaming at me, why would anybody go to the yellow pages to buy whiteout? You're not making any sense. There's more to it than running a business than just somebody buying the product down at the local Rite Aid farm. There's suppliers, there's trucking companies that need to reach you. There's all sorts of people you do business with that need to find your phone number. There's reporters. There's a whole host of things. And remember, before the internet, of course, now it would just come up. If you spelled it wrong, whiteout, it would come up. I want the corporate office for whiteout. It was all about white pages and yellow pages and things in alphabetical order. I'm just telling you, never do it. So when all this weird-ass spelling comes for these old businesses and stuff, to me, it absolutely confirms it is a Mandela effect. Okay, I just looked it up. Dates back to 1966, whiteout, Bic. It's a French company. Société, whatever. My French ain't too good. Société Bic. They make the shavers, those little yellow shavers they're known for, pens. Whiteout. Introduced to the U.S. market in like the late 60s, patents and everything in the early 70s. I'm just telling you one last time. There's no way they're going to pick. Everybody knows how to spell white. It's not a difficult spelling. Tidy, bowl, tidy. You're not even doing BOWL. You're just doing BOL. Why would you do it? Nobody in the meeting. I'm going on and on. I'm sorry. Be like, sir, you're creating hundreds of thousands of hours of extra work for our suppliers, vendors, all these different that need to find us by confusing the spelling. There's no reason to do that. Let's just WHITE ain't that tough. Let's just put one extra letter in the damn brand and not make a mistake that costs hundreds of thousands of hours and fucked up records. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Who's the asshole that initially proposed WITE out? You're fired. What? You loved the idea this morning. You're fired. Okay, I alluded to this earlier. A lot of people have Mandela effects where they literally saw something change before their very eyes. Greg basically has two. Now, if Greg tells me something, I trust him 100% that this is exactly as it went down. I bet my life on it. Okay, this is how much I trust Greg. He's helped me with so many things over the years. The first one was Wizard of Oz. I might have told the story before. I'll be as brief as possible. He was into Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. It was a big thing to go Dark Side of the Rainbow, where they set Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, to the first hour or whatever it is of The Wizard of Oz. And the songs seem to sync up scene by scene, and they do sync up very well. And to me, there's no question Pink Floyd designed Dark Side of the Moon to correspond with The Wizard of Oz, but that's neither here nor there. So it was the major Mandela effect for The Wizard of Oz is the scarecrow with the gun, and as they approach the witch's lair, they have all these weird items that people don't remember. The Tin Man has his axe, but he's carrying a big pipe wrench, I think. And the lion has a big bug sprayer or net. Or the scarecrow, the point is, has a gun. And thousands of people, when this kind of broke in 2016, and tens of thousands of people, they'd be like, you know what? I would absolutely remember if the scarecrow went in there with a gun. And no question. I would as well. But to me, it is a major Mandela effect, but I can't call it an anchor. But that's not the point of this section. Point is, when he went and he pulled it up initially, and I'm getting a few parts of the story wrong, but the basics are the basics. And, he would agree I got the basics right. he didn't see anything wrong with the scene. He just saw them kind of shaking and upset and approaching or nervous and scared approaching the witches. He's like, a gun and a pipe. And he, I don't know if he looked away or he looked back or he got a phone call or it wasn't there. And then when he looked back or something like that, I guess I should get the particulars, but basics are correct, guys. Then, of course, well, he's not going to see something that doesn't reflect it in reality. Of course, then the Scarecrow had his gun. They had all these extra things. He's like, what? It just popped up in front of his eyes. And Greg and I talked about it later. And here's how this is, if you believe this is correct, or our interpretation of this is correct, this is a huge giveaway as to how reality works. See, if the Mandela effect happens, it's like a wave is going to go throughout all of reality. And it's basically very similar to web crawler, in my opinion, a search engine. It's going to crawl the web, or the Mandela effect device is like the Genesis device in Khan. It's going to crawl reality itself and look for incidences, people's DVDs or people's VHS tapes or old film where it shows the way people remember the Wizard of Oz. And reality is going to be overwritten, just like at the end of The Matrix. Sauté's lying with the black cat on the street, and you see a wave go over Sauté at the end of Matrix 1. It's just a reset, a reconfiguration, a defrag of reality itself. And then everything's synced up, including human beings. Human beings then sync up to the new reality. That's why your friends and family think you're crazy if you're talking about the Mandela effect. But Greg and I talked about it, and we said, well, wait a second. The reality wave that went over to reset everything, it didn't know that this was a scene from The Wizard of Oz. I'm like, well, wait a second. How didn't it know? And it didn't have the right markers. For example, his VHS tape didn't say The Wizard of Oz. His VHS tape maybe said nothing, or it said Dark Side of the Moon or Dark Side of the Rainbow, which it didn't understand, for example. And it was not set to the regular verbiage or not lyrics or verbiage. I've been talking a long time, guys. Just Dorothy talking and the lion talking and the Tin Man talking and vocals. It was set to music. So it's like the reality missed it. The reset of reality, or the Mandela effect, missed it. So he pops it in initially. And he's not, guys, I've heard hundreds, I'm sure Vanessa VA would agree, hundreds of these accounts. And I stopped doing a lot of Mandela effect research about 3 years ago, where just as Greg said, it was something and then they look away and it changes right in front of their eyes. I've had people talk about the first, or the quote first Billy Graham funeral. And people will they'll have a residual of it. And I've seen people post blurry images of the first Billy Graham funeral, or he died and he didn't die. It's like Mandela. He died, but he didn't die. And then it's just I don't know, the residuals fade, or it's blurry. You can't quite make it out. It's just that I think at certain times the reality just misses. And this is why these residuals exist, because for some reason they're missed. And then it has to be more careful on the back end, but the mistakes are slowly corrected over time. And in the case with Greg, it was basically on the fly. And I had a similar example myself. I'll tell that story in just a moment. I don't know why we do that when we make videos. I do it. Livette does it. It's like, if I go out and get a drink and come back, nobody knows that. So why do I have to say I'll be back in a moment? Well, anyway, just habit. Hard to get out of that, I guess. So mine was... I've told this before. Let me try to recreate it. It was Predator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Predator. They're in the jungles with Carl Weathers. Hey, he's also the Action Jackson. And it was Hopper. They did the same, when they first are trying to figure out what they're dealing with. He says, Hopper. They did the same thing to Hopper. Something like that. I might be getting a little bit wrong. But I'm watching it. It's on TV. And, just watching it one night, maybe 3 years ago. I don't know when it was, 4 years ago, whatever it might be. And he says, Hopper, they did the same thing to Captain Hopper. And I went, what? Now, I know this movie cold. I remember going to the theater to see it in the 80s. I believe it was the 80s. I remember going in late. We went in during the helicopter scene where Jesse Ventura was spitting his chew up on the guy's boot. We missed the whole first scene. I remember every bit of going to the theater to see it. I've seen it, I don't know how many times since. 40. I don't know. They did the same thing. I said, Captain? They never said Captain Hopper. I know the first one was Jim Hopper. They did the same thing to Jim Hopper. I think it was. Okay. To Captain. So everything's on DVR all the time for these cable boxes. So I hit pause. I back it up 15, 20 seconds, whatever it is. And I said, I got to hear that again. Did the same thing to Captain. Captain? So I thought, I'm not thinking Mandela effect at this point. I'm thinking, so I save it. I record it, save it on DVR. And I thought, okay, I don't know. It's a different version. I know with all the versions I've seen. I have a DVD in the other room. They did the same thing to Jim Hopper. Okay, go to bed. Don't think anything of it. Get up the next morning. And I'm like, okay, I got to check this out. It could be a potential Mandela effect. And I go, first things, I get my DVD out, which I probably bought in the early 90s, mid-90s. Well, probably mid-90s. DVDs weren't that popular before 95. I've had it a long time. And this just happened a few years ago. Pop it in, go to the scene, and it says, just like I always remembered, from the DVD this time, not the DVR, Hopper. They did the same thing to Jim Hopper. They're saying they, like, they don't know it's one predator up in the trees at this point. I'm like, okay, that's where does Captain come from? So I'm still not really thinking Mandela effect. So I think I'll go back to what I recorded on the DVR and just, I'll just hear it one more time. It'll say Captain, and it's a different version. I don't know why they would do that. I go back to the DVR, and I play it from the DVR, and it says Hopper. They did the same thing to Jim Hopper. The DVR does not say Captain. Now, I heard Captain, and it surprised me so much, it got my attention, and I didn't record it with a video, or wasn't thinking Mandela effect, but remember, I backed it up and listened to it twice, and I know the movie cold, and it got my attention. So when it got my attention, I went back and listened to it. They did the same thing to Captain Hopper. So if I would have been smart, I would have grabbed my V8, but reality can usually overcome these futile tactics, would have tried to record it or put a microphone on it. So when I went back to the DVR, it changed, completely changed. It said Captain, Jim Hopper. Now, of course, why? Matt, if it's always been Jim Hopper, and it still is Jim Hopper, like nobody now would think it's a Mandela effect. There's not, why would just for a day or two it said Captain? I don't know. Obviously, there's shit we're not going to understand as to how the reality works until we get out of the snow globe and look back into it. And I was like, oh, is that what it was? Oh, shit. I took that shit so seriously. That's what you'll do. You look back into it. Oh, that's what it was? With us? It'll be a joke. It'll be a joke. It was like going in the closet for half a second. I took it so seriously. So I don't know. I don't know. But I remember that's clearly what happened. And it's not as profound as Greg's story. And Greg has another story, just not quite as good as The Wizard of Oz changing before his eyes, but similar. So he has two of them. But again, this is about honing your perceptions. This is somebody that saw the 7-Eleven job application the day of and just said, this can't happen. There's something going on here that we're not being told. So his perceptions were, we can continue to do this. And you, as you tell yourself to look for this, and the reality can't hide this stuff from you, and keep telling yourself that and believe it, you'll see it. It'll start to come out. It might take years to hone these skills, but you will get them. The other one I had was with Billy Joel's Piano Man. It wasn't nearly as profound as the Predator one. I'll be as brief as I can. I think Moneybags, was his channel name, was it Moneybags 63 or 70? He's the initial guy for all these Mandela Effect videos, and he did a good job documenting them. I've just kind of lost touch with his channel, but give him credit where credit's due. He put forth the potential Mandela Effect for the Piano Man. Son, it says, if you assume it's a Mandela Effect, son, can you play me a memory? And I was like, yeah, that doesn't sit right with me. Son, can you play me a melody? So I didn't watch much of the Moneybags. It's Moneybags 73. I forget the number, but I didn't watch as much of the video as I should. or I can stick with it. I just went over the Billy Joel's video and I started watching it. And it said, "Son, can you play me a melody?" And I'm like, well, I just saw this. It says melody. Why is Moneybags talking about memory like it's some Mandela effect, and it's still a melody? So I guess maybe I went over back to the Moneybags video. I don't know. I came back to the Billy Joel video, and this is very similar to what happened with Predator. Just a few minutes later, and Billy Joel says, "Son, can you play me a memory?" I went, it like changed in just a few minutes. Now, okay, it's possible I heard what I wanted to hear, just like with that California Dream. And a lot of people hear what they want to hear, so I went in to pray. There's two different ways you can hear the California Dreaming song. So maybe that's what happened to me with Billy Joel. But it hit me pretty hard. It wasn't nearly like the Captain Hopper thing. I just wanted to mention that one as well. But they're the only two things that have happened to me. I haven't had anything like what happened to Greg and some of you. Okay, guys, let me close with this section. And many of you will disagree, but I'm going to go here, and I'm not sure I'm ever going to go back. And let me use what's going on in the truth community now as an example, just one example of where I'm going now with reality's fluid. It changes. It's not very real, and I'm never going to treat it like it's very real. So for years, just as one example, I'm not picking on the people that make these videos. This is the best example to use and relate it back to what I believe I'm learning about reality based on the Mandela effect. It's an apt or appropriate example for now. For years, many YouTube channels, I've done it myself. This cathedral could not have been built per what was available at the time. The Taj Mahal could not have been built. Impossible structures. The World's Fairs. Okay, we've seen them all. Okay, great. Erie Canal could not have been built. But now, pendulum swings back. Different YouTube channels saying, wait a second. People, this video shows people can move 10,000-pound blocks, and there probably was techniques to build these things. Okay, to me, it's the immediately reality. We're then doing what the reality wants. We're getting right down in the weeds. This is where I am, and again, it's what I kind of say. Some people call it a cop out. I haven't had too many people come to me directly saying it's a complete cop out, but here's where I'm going with this. In terms of the heavy structures, the Great Pyramids, the architecture. If you are, and you've heard me say it before, but I'm going to close on this. If you are Mandela affected, and in some way, even if you only have one anchor effect, you've seen reality completely shift, even if it's just a Kit Kat dash, and that's all it is. And there's no dash today, but 100% that's all your grandmother bought. You stared at that dash for years. You know that, and there's no record of it in any known reality today. There is no difference, in my opinion. I don't understand why this, this to me is, once you get into a certain state, this is easy to accept. There's no difference between the Great Pyramid and a Kit Kat dash. If one tiny little bit of reality completely shifted and the entire historical record is overwritten in an instant based on everything you know, then why would I assign more stock and value to the Great Pyramid? There is no difference, in my opinion. If reality can change a Kit Kat dash, it can put a fucking Great Pyramid in there with no difference. Just because one's heavy, really? That's a fish in a fish tank. Possible explanation of understanding how the filter works and how the heater works. There's no difference to me. So it's the same thing. All this endless debate of how this stuff could be built. If you're not Mandela affected, then it makes sense why you're going to get in the weeds as to how did they build that. Once you see reality shift, or Greg, for example, just seeing the Wizard of Oz change in front of his eyes. And every time after that, he loaded that videotape. Of course, it had the gun. It had all the stuff. Once you see that, you'll never ever get into a debate on how a freaking cathedral was built per the way reality is presented. And of course, I've made several of these videos saying the Cologne Cathedral, per the way reality is presented, there's no possible way, in my opinion, still that could have been built. I don't care what techniques. Have you ever been to the Cologne Cathedral? Okay, it's not a block. It is absurd. It's like it's in the ballpark of the Great Pyramids in terms of how impossible it would be to build. But ultimately, all I'm saying is per how they present reality, there's no way men could have done that or women could have done that. But it doesn't matter to me anymore because it's a Kit Kat dash. The whole reality is fluid. it's a dark city that can change overnight, or it doesn't matter. To the endless breakdown of how this was built or that was done is pointless if you see many of the things I presented here. If you don't see any Mandela effects and you've stuck with me this long, that's pretty amazing. You're very open-minded, and I give you credit. But once you just see reality just shift on the fly, there's no point in analyzing any sort of construction. It just becomes pointless. Thanks for listening, guys.